Hey guys, Mimi here, and I finished the Maxi skirt tutorial. Yay, me! Okay, so before we get started, I want to go over a couple of things. First, I want to let you know that the whole purpose of my making these videos is to show you that even if you've never sewn anything your entire life, you can make one of my projects. I always make sure that it's easy to follow and that I try and give you as many tips as I can along the way. If you can sew a button, you can make this skirt, I promise. I want to give you some fabric tips. Now, I want you to to avoid anything that is super stretchy. I want you to avoid anything that's silky and anything that's slippery or anything see-through for your first project because chiffons tend to fray and that's going to frustrate you. The whole purpose of this is for you to do a very first sewing project that is easy and rewarding, and that when you're done you have something that you're proud of and you wear and it's pretty and it inspires you to want to keep going. There's no purpose in doing something that is going to frustrate you and maybe make you not want to sew again. So, when you go to the fabric store, fabric comes on a bolt like this, right? And on that bolt, it gives you information. It tells you what the fabric is and what the contents are, but I want you to pay attention to the width of the fabric. Fabric comes in 3 standard widths, 36, 45, and 60, but you'll see very many different sizes. So as long as you keep your fabric between 45 and 60 inches wide for this project, you'll be fine. The second measurement, and this you'll need because you'll need to know exactly how much fabric you're gonna want to get at the fabric store. Now, you're going to measure from your waist to the floor like I mentioned. Now that measurement for me is 41 inches, and we're going to tack on 2 inches for the hem, and 1 inch for the hem and 1 inch for the elastic casing. That brings me to 43 inches. When you go to the fabric store, fabric is cut per yard, and each yard is measured at 36 inches. So if I need 43 inches, I'm going to multiply that by 2 because we're going to cut 2 panels of fabric. Now that measurement is 86. I'll round that up to 90 because you always want an extra inch or 2 in there in case the fabric isn't cut properly. Now if I take 90 and I divide that into 36, it'll give me exactly how much yardage I need. Now replace my measurements with yours and you know exactly how much fabric to go buy at the store. Now, I've covered some of the basics, and as you know, I'm always here if you need me or you have questions, but I think now it's time to get started. So, I'm going to show you how to cut, how to measure, how to mark, and how to sew this skirt, and by the time we're done, you're going to have a fabulous maxi skirt that you'll be very, very happy with. Let's get started. Hi guys. Okay, so now I've already gone over the measurements, but I'm going to show you how to mark your fabric so that all that blabbering I was doing earlier will start to make sense. So remember, you're going to use your measurements in place of the ones that I'm using now for myself. So I said that my waist was 26 inches, and then I asked you to divide or multiply that by 3 and then divide that number by 4. The reason you're dividing it by 4 is because when your fabric comes you're going to be folding it, so you're going to be using one side, 2 sides, and we're using 2 panels, so that makes four sides all together. Now remember, you want to fold your fabric so that the selvage edge, which is the edge that looks like this, it's kind of a finished edge, are together, and you're going to be cutting on the fold of the fabric. So you're going to take that measurement. Now remember, my 26 times 3 was 78, divided by 4 gave me 19.5, and I'm rounding up to 20. So I'm going to mark 20 inches on my fabric. And then the length of my skirt, as we talked about earlier, was 43 inches. So I'm actually going to use my measuring tape. And we're going to measure down from that mark down 43 inches. Now you can use your yardstick and some chalk to make your lines so that you're cutting straight. So I'm going to use just regular old tailor's chalk. You can get this at Joann's or any fabric store. And I'm just going to mark. And then I'm going to mark all the way down. To that 43. You want to make sure you have a straight line. And then across the bottom. You're going to have a rectangle. It's really similar to the pencil skirt tutorial that we did. So you're going to cut along those lines. And then you're going to cut that's your first panel. When you open it up, it's 40 inches wide by 43 inches long. You're going to cut the same exact panel again. So you'll end up with 2 panels. So I'm going to cut the second panel and then I'll come back. Okay, so now we have 2 panels. Now what you're going to do is you're going to open out one of the panels and you're going to lay them together, right sides together. Now right sides together means that the fabric that's going to be showing is going to be facing each other. And you're going to be sewing down the length of this fabric. Once you align your sides, you can take it over to the machine. Now we're going to start sewing down the length of the skirt on both sides. When you're done, you'll end up with a gigantic tube. So I'll show you how to do that. Let's go to the machine. Remember, you're sewing down the length of the skirt. Now if it's easier for you, you're welcome to pin it along the way. It might help you keep your fabric together because both edges should be aligned. You place your fabric at the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And remember to keep your eye on the guide and not your needle. Remove your pins as you get to them. Okay, so now we've sewn both sides all the way down the length, and we're going to press open the seams. Now I think I spend more time ironing than I actually do sewing because you should press your seams out every time that you iron. So if you iron a seam, if you sew a seam, you want to iron it. You want your seams to lay flat. Now, if I was using a fabric that frayed or needed to be finished, then I would use my serger. If you don't have a serger, you could use your zigzag stitch on your machine. But to keep this as basic as possible, I'm not going to finish any seams. This is a knit and it will not fray. So you want to press your seams open. Now this part's important. We're going to create a casing for the elastic. So we're going to fold over. Now we're working on the wrong side of the fabric. We're going to fold over 1 inch all the way around. Once you press it, it'll leave a crease. So when you go to the machine to sew your casing for your elastic, it'll make things easier. If you try to eyeball 1 inch as you're going along, it's going to make things more difficult for you. So here's a quick little tip. I have a piece of paper. What I do is I take my ruler and I mark a 1 inch, a 2 inch, and a 3 inch guide. So what I do is I place my fabric on the 1 inch guide, and I use that to press evenly all the way around the fabric. Okay, so now that I have pressed over the 1 inch on the wrong side of my fabric, we're going to go ahead and take it to the machine and we're going to sew very close to that edge. Okay, so let's do that. You're going to start at either seam, it doesn't matter. And you're going to sew all the way around, and when you come close to where you started, you're going to leave a small opening because that's where we're going to insert the elastic. Okay, now I've come all the way around to where I started, so I'm going to leave a small space so that we can insert the elastic. Okay, now I've already measured my elastic around my waist, and then I added a 1/2 inch because we're going to fold it over and sew it together. But before we do that, we're going to use this little safety pin. And you put the safety pin at one end of the elastic, and this is what you're going to use to put the elastic through your casing. And you just keep pulling that safety pin until your elastic is all the way through. Now don't let the other end of the elastic go into that casing, because then you won't be able to grab it. So when you get close to that edge, you want to pin it so that you don't lose the elastic.
Go again.
Okay, so now I've come to the end of my elastic. And so I pinned one end so that I wouldn't lose it inside the casing. And now both sides of the elastic are out, and we're going to sew those together. I like to lay my elastic flat because I don't like a bump in my seam. And using a zigzag stitch, we're going to sew that close. Okay, once your elastic is in, you can arrange your gathers. Once you have your gathers put together, you can go ahead and close that opening. Okay, so we're going to close this little hole. So put your needle down where the other stitching is. Pull your fabric so that you're not trying to sew over the gathers. Now don't stitch the elastic. Turn your skirt inside out. And you're done. The only thing left to do is to finish the hem of your skirt, and you can either do that by folding over 1 inch and sewing all around the edge, or you can just do it on your serger if you have a serger. Now I will try on the skirt and come right back. All right, all done. Now you have a perfectly wearable maxi skirt. I'll talk to you guys again real soon. Peace.